Reaction Who? Ooh, son cut me off. This is not out of tune. Ooh. Okay, it's pretty bad, isn't it?
Oh my god,
It's
I mean, at first I thought you were gonna tell me you were part of the Lollipop Who's, and you wanted to welcome us to Munchkinland or something.
I mean, I could auto-tune. No, I can't. I gotta stop. There's so many things you can do with the whole ooh. But anyways, yeah, because I can't carry a tune, but auto-tune, I don't know if it could work. But yeah, everybody, welcome to Super Geeks special thing called Reaction Who. This is a coin phrase originally by Sunseal for reacting to the new season of Doctor Who, starring Jodie Whittaker as the first female Doctor. I shouldn't even add that as a disclaimer but it is there. It's out there as the Doctor, and so usually it's, unless someone can join us at the last minute, we like to react to this sooner than our scheduled Sunday night episodes usually, because every Sunday night previously the new episode comes out. So Son and I are going to try to always pick a day and just kind of as soon as possible react to when we both seen it. So how you doing tonight, son?
It's just unfortunate that this one is on a Friday night.
I know, because we're so close to episode 3, which is the Rosa Parks is the episode, but the episode is called Rosa. But that's okay though. So
It'll be interesting. That one will be.
Yeah, it's not really fresh as a lot of the other reaction people out there, but it's our chance to
But
talk
it's
about
not rotten, so you can't call us
It's
terrible
not
on the
rotten.
tomato meter.
Yep, that's true. It's not rotten because we've had a chance. I mean, some people have still not watched it. I mean, it's just a matter of when people have an opportunity because some people are busy. Some people have lives, and I don't, so I can watch everything fresh, like a fresh tomato.
Wow, I just admitting you have no life.
I mean, depends on what one quantifies as a life, so.
Well, I think you have a life, George.
I do, watching Doctor Who. So, speaking of that, so you've gotten a chance to watch the second episode, which is entitled "The Ghost Monument," correct?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with you because if I start with myself, you won't get a chance to talk. So, let's go. What do you think? And first of all, out of a 10, what would you rate it?
A lot better than the first episode, that's for sure.
Okay, but what would you rate it out of 10?
Probably a 7 or 8.
All right, that's fair. So
it's not all the way up there, but it's not terrible either.
All right, let's hear your thoughts. Go for it.
It was interesting that the Ghost Monument itself was the TARDIS. I think that this wasn't said in the episode, but that there's that explanation that's going to be hanging there, that the reason that the planet actually fell out of alignment was because of the Ghost Monument being the TARDIS phase shifting on the planet constantly for thousands of years.
I find that interesting you said that because I wasn't sure if I agreed at first, but when I get to my opinion, I've watched the episode several times, and I think I agree with you that that's part of it, especially since they promised this is not going to be an arc type season.
Are the raps after you?
Yeah, they're definitely planting seeds for something going on, but that doesn't mean there's an arc. They're just planting seeds is not the same thing. They did this on a lot of shows out there. You can plant a seed doesn't mean it's part of an arc for that season. I mean, that seed you plant could happen 3 seasons later. So they're just planting a seed. So keep going. What are your initial thoughts?
For a guy that is supposed to be terrible with hand-eye coordination, it seems oddly peculiar that he's really good at the hand-eye coordination when it comes to translating a video game into real life.
Actually, a lot of people talked about the whole Call of Duty joke with Ryan, and they found that the choice directionally to do that, like first-person view when he charged, was pretty epic. I have to agree with that. That was pretty interesting. I don't know a lot about dyspraxia, which is the condition he has. So
Right.
I'm not qualified, unless you. I mean, I don't know if you are. So I'm not going to say you're not qualified because I
No,
don't.
I'm not, I don't have that problem either.
Some
I,
people can do it in video games and not necessarily in real life because your
well,
feet.
that's what I'm saying. This is a guy who could not handle the coordination required to ride a bike, but in a video game, you could, because the hand-eye coordination is a lot more minuscule. It's not as heavy of a physical action as it is trying to maintain balance and upper arm movement in turning the bike and maintaining an eye contact ahead of you instead of looking down at what you're doing. Um, that doesn't translate into a video game where you're always looking in one direction and you're literally moving your fingers at that point. But my issue was, oh, they're making a joke of, okay, this person is probably really good at video games, but that doesn't make sense when you do that in video games. Your muscle memory and your coordination is completely different to you literally picking up a gun and shooting things.
You know, it's funny. It's actually that part doesn't bother me. It's the ladder stuff, because they make a big deal about him going up and down ladders. In Doctor Who, I never noticed it before, but people escaping through ladders, jump and climbing, and they did this in the first episode, and then they did it in the second episode. But his ability to, the old thing about Doctor Who, run. Ever since episode 1 of the New Who, which was Rose, the whole thing has been, you need to learn how to run. And that was River Song's thing. Everybody, watch us run, right? He has a problem with that. And I love the way they runs, zigzag or sideways. And he has to survive by figuring it out. And it's harder for him than all the other companions. It's like having a handicapped companion. And, well, it is a handicap. It is. And so but there was the one scene when he's like, Yaz is kind of watching him as he's trying to overcome the going down the ladder. They kind of copped out and they didn't actually show him struggle to do the ladder. And so they cut the scene. I didn't like that because I thought we need to really appreciate, we need to see his struggle every time because it makes it more appreciative. So the ladder thing to me...
Well, the counter argument would be that watching it over and over and over again just gets old because you're like, okay, we get it. He can't do the ladder thing.
Yeah. And I mean, what do you think of the cinematography this season? I mean, Jesus Christ. I think that it's incredibly cinematic, obviously in episode 1, episode 2. That first 7 minutes in this episode, when it was like one long take, I don't know how they did this. If it was like they said, hey, improvise. Because if I was the director, and I wish Carlos was here, and I'll ask him Sunday. Well, no, whenever I get a chance. If you're a director and you want to have a long, continuous scene where the camera follows you guys down the ship, just winds around, doesn't cut, because you can tell when they may have done different takes when the camera cuts. But with this one, they did one long take. And when you're a director, the only way they can do that is either one of two things. Either they did the one long take several times over, or they said, you know what, that's not really realistic. Improvise. Therefore, no matter what you say, take this information from the script and just kind of make up your jargon so that we can do the long cut and it's not going to be like, oh, she screwed up her line. Because if you're making it go, you can't really screw it up. I'm thinking they might have told them to improvise, but I don't know. What do you think? Because that was incredible.
Okay, wait. Okay, what scene are we talking about?
The very first 7 minutes after they got grabbed from space, and she's on that ship, and she's trying to cut off that second.
Oh, when Jodie is fighting with the other guy,
the captain, yeah. Because it was long. That was very unusual. It was one long. Because when they do cuts, you could tell that they did take 1, take 2, cut as a director. But what they did, and I've seen this on other shows where they talk about this, what they did was, it was one long shot. There was no cuts, which means that's very rare. That means either one of two things. Either the director was so demanding that he told them to do one long cut, and if somebody screwed up, they had to do the whole long thing over again. Or he said, take this script information and sort of interpret it, and then do improvised lines. Here's what you're trying to accomplish. That way they don't have to cut, but they can do one long continuous scene and move the camera around. I don't know which one they went with, but it was very noticeable, at least to me. So I don't know if you noticed that. When you think back on it, did you not notice that how they kind of followed everybody into the cockpit? She's arguing with a dude, and they went back and forth, and then but if you look, they didn't cut. It was the camera followed them all around them, but they didn't. That's why I'm saying it's like it was so impressive. Some people may not appreciate that, but it takes a lot of effort as a director and a cinematographer and everybody that was involved in the scene, because they didn't cut it. They went one long scene, and everybody was saying exactly whatever for like 7 whole minutes. And again, I think they told them to improvise. That way there was no way to get it wrong. But I could be wrong, and they could have just said, we're really strict. Let's do this all over again. What do you think they did? Knowing Chris Chibnall now, his style. Although he didn't actually direct the episode, but still.
It's possible that it is entirely possible that they improvised the scene. But I would like to point out, you were asking me about cinematography earlier, and then jumped on this.
Yeah, sorry.
Whoever the director for this episode was, every scene is a Chekhov's gun. Literally every scene in this episode is a Chekhov's gun, because
I don't know what that means.
So the trope or the theory of the Chekhov's gun is, in Act 1 you see a gun in a certain area or hanging up somewhere or on a mantle. You see a gun. Act 3, somebody is murdered, funnily enough, by a gun. Well, you've already seen the gun previously in Act 1, and it turns up in Act 4 when the big reveal happens, because it was the murder weapon all along.
Alright, I can see that.
Every scene in this episode is a Chekhov's gun, because, they'll go back and forth and do their really long spiels in a single scene, and then as they're leaving, the camera just kind of pans over, and there's one of the wraps just floating in the wind.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about now. That cigar was the Chekhov's gun, is that what you're saying?
No, the wraps.
Oh, the wraps.
Yeah.
Okay. You know,
the little the death shroud things.
We're gonna obviously. I find it interesting because what you just said, because they kept saying that there's not going to be any seasonal arcs. They've already been re-mentioning the dudes from the aliens. I forget their names. The aliens from the one with the tooth guy. His people.
The tooth fairy people.
The tooth guys listening to this, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the people off the top of my head. I should have wrote it down, but you know who I'm talking about. The people who. The guy from the villain from the first episode, they made it clear that his entire, and by the way, spoilers, I'll make sure they know, that this entire episode, the people that did his people were the ones responsible for obliterating this planet and causing this catastrophic destruction of whatever civilization used to exist here. And some people have expressed disappointment that they went from being the predator to, now these guys are like, genocidal warriors who...
It does seem a little odd that we deal with a guy who's quite literally a cheat for a people of warriors who are supposed to be like this.
Well, he did say it was more of a tradition. It wasn't necessarily indicative of his entire people's philosophy on war. He just said that was a ritual to prove you're the top gun. You have to go do this. It doesn't mean
here's the thing. He quite blatantly admitted he was cheating the whole time.
He did.
He was supposed to show up with no weapons or nothing and then find his target and kill his target. And here he had like a big biomass ball to find the target in the first place. He had like all the weapons he had in his body.
You know what? I thought as we were talking about this, I remember one of the things that Chris Chibnall talked about. What he promised was there are no seasonal arcs. However, he also said we're not going to see the traditional bad guys. We're going to get something new. So my new take on this is he's trying to sort of introduce this new bad guy through episode 1 and 2 without meaning it's an arc. Meaning that it means something later. He's just simply introducing. It's like saying, okay, here's an analogy.
Well, I mean, he's basically setting up. He's basically setting up his version of the Weeping Angels. So when they show up later, you're like, oh.
I look at them more like the Santarans. I mean, he's basically saying, okay, they're a warrior culture with certain honor things going on, and we're just telling you about them. You're going to hear about them. We're going to say, here's one of them in this episode, and then we're going to talk about how they did all this in the second episode. And so if they get talked about later throughout the season, it doesn't look, it's not an arc because it's not a specific story. They're just saying this alien warrior race are the new bad guys that we are introducing as an original race, and we're simply letting you guys know throughout the season. We're kind of like saturating you with information.
Again, it's like introducing the Weeping Angels and Don't Blink.
But they're doing it more aggressively, like more than one in a row.
Yeah, I understand that. But see, here's the thing. We don't have the Rhys Davies / Moffat effect to introduce Don't Blink.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, all I'm saying is they're doing it like more in the same, like in a row to just kind of throw it in your face. Like, these are the new bad guys. These are how bad they are. But they're not, and it's not an arc. We're throwing it in your face that this is the new direction we're going. These are new bad guys. I hope you like them. We're introducing how bad they are. We're kind of planting. It's like they're the new Klingons. Like, hey, guess what? They've been around in the lore, or they are now, and this is how badass they are. Instead of waiting
it's still a massive. It's still a massive turnaround, though, to go from episode 1 where, so this guy's a massive cheat in a race that he's supposed to become the leader of. Well, that we can't have that. Let's, I don't know, near kill him and send him back to his people because he's a cheat. Well, I mean, okay, we don't necessarily know if he survives or not, which is I'm totally fine with. But at the same time, the big reveal for episode 2 is they're not really these honorable people because they literally held like a whole bunch of scientists indefinitely until they died to run all these massively horrible experiments for weapons of mass intergalactic war.
Kind of reminds me of how Gowron, he was traditionally the chosen, Picard advocated for him, the leader of the Klingons, but as time went on, it's like, yeah, that might have been a mistake. And so I'm sort of getting that impression. So let's move on from that guy and that topic, because I want to jump to the one thing that this whole episode has made everybody talk about, which was the TARDIS. When she got it back, her relationship with the TARDIS, the way she said, "Come to Daddy."
Okay. I will wholly admit, George, before you even get started, you saying it that way was a whole hell of a lot more amusing than the way she did.
Really? Oh, that's true. Probably. I just, that whole sequence when the TARDIS turns out to be the Ghost Monument, and she is trying to, stabilize it, and she goes, "Come to Daddy, Mummy," and then the way she goes up to the TARDIS, and she's like, her lovingly sort of doting, thing in the TARDIS.
See, I knew the redecoration joke would come up. I just thought it would be a completely different outcome than what it was.
You were, we both actually thought this, so I'm not going to blame you completely. We thought the TARDIS was hot, necessarily, looking at it like I said, and I joked about, two female dogs or whatever. Versus a male dog or a female dog. It was actually the opposite, and I was pleasantly surprised. It turned out the way the TARDIS was more like, no, I love you too. I thought that was an interesting little twist. I forgot my key, and it opens the door for her. That was actually, and then it throws a biscuit dispenser. That shows me all I need to know. No, I know it seems silly, but
No. I was really hoping that we'd get like some hologram because of all the crystals and stuff. We'd get some hologram display of the lady TARDIS from the Doctor's Wife.
That would have been
And she would take one or two looks at Jodie and go, "You redecorated. I don't like it."
I love the twist on that, by the way, when she said, "I really like it." I thought that was neat.
Well, it just for in some ways it's actually the one thing that I enjoyed about Moffat's introduction of Bill.
I just really enjoyed the way
It's smaller on the outside.
Yeah,
Wait,
some
what?
some people have argued that they don't like the way that when you walk in, that the whole TARDIS is an attachment to the end of the police box. I don't mind that at all, but it's a preference.
It's like another. It's like a coat room.
If you watch the Paul McGann movie, they kind of describe it as a threshold when you enter. It's a threshold into another dimension. It's not an addition, the way that they made it seem like in the New Who so far. It's like you don't. Some people have said, well, they preferred it when you can open the door and it's just all of a sudden you're just thrust into the impossibility of it. They've always said it's a threshold. It's a threshold.
Well, let's be honest. The TARDIS has rooms, lots and lots of rooms. Why wouldn't the entranceway be just another small room?
That's true. And I just find it. Everything Jodie did, her expressions, her mannerisms, her relationship to the lovingness of and she said, "I need you" when she's trying to get the TARDIS to come back. There were certain ways they're differentiating the gender in a good way. Like a woman is more compassionate, more loving than a man in general. I'm not saying everybody can be labeled. I'm simply saying that in general speaking, their difference is so subtle that they don't make it so like tropey. And so she's like, come to, and then it was just the way she was so emotional.
Well, George, you're really crackly. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's probably because I'm like saying it with doing the emotional hand waving thing that people do when they get emotional. What I'm trying to say is Jodie Whittaker's portrayal that one scene when she's so excited TARDIS is coming back and she's so hopeful, and then she finally gets it back and gives it compliments. Oh, you need the glossed over exterior, and she's like, oh, you touched up, you look good. Paraphrase it, of course. But then once she gets inside, her reaction was the best one I've ever seen on the show, period. Because Matt Smith liked it too, but people say, well, some of the doctors have said, what have you got for me? Her expression was one of pure, I really appreciate what you've done. And the TARDIS was like, well, thank you for saying that, so here's a biscuit dispenser. I thought that was just something very telling about the way they're subtly showing the relationship between the TARDIS and a female doctor. And I think this is going to be... And I'll tell you what, the companions all together are... I used to not really know if I wanted to like Graham, but now he stepped up when it was necessary. When they didn't even know about the TARDIS as far as what it really was. They didn't know if they were going to get out of the situation. They didn't know what was going on, but they all stepped up. I'm a little torn on Yaz, but altogether I think they're the best sort of group they've had in a long time. Probably since the Amy and the Rory thing. And River was kind of a part of that group, but she was off and on. But you know what I mean. I mean, oftentimes the trio is the best way, like Susan and the first two there, the Formans. No, not the Formans. Why am I forgetting their names? I'm having a brain fart. There was Susan. And the two teachers.
Yeah, the two teachers.
Yeah, we'll call them the two teachers. I'm just having a little bit of a brain fart when it comes to them.
Look, I've slept so many times since I saw an original first Doctor episode.
But you know what? There's a lot of throwbacks this season to even the introduction. Oh, we have to talk about the new intro. I love it. What do you think of it?
So it's okay. It's something. It's like, okay, I enjoyed the music a lot better than I do the opening visual. The opening visual just seems like I'm staring at a lava lamp for some reason.
But you
And a
do
lava
recognize
lamp
that it's a
that's
throwback, right? It's meant to be a throwback.
sort of. Sort of. I mean, it's trying to be, but not as well.
I get what you're saying, but it is a throwback. It's more like a modernish sort of. There's a word. I wish I could remember what it is. Somebody that was talking about this on a podcast. There's sort of it's almost like a beating vortex, almost like a beating heart. It's hard to say if I'm accurately describing it, but I love the way they took that classic sort of visual and the motif and made it into a modern sort of throwback, yet something new, and I just love it. So
I just didn't enjoy that it was gooey. That's what I didn't like.
it took me a few tries to. It was more the audio part of it that really got me.
No, see, like I said, I love the audio itself. It's just the gooiness of whatever the hell this Rorschach lava lamp thing is. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, a lava lamp is actually not a bad description, to be honest with you. Yeah. So, okay, let me ask you this. I want to keep this kind of short. It's just a reaction. But what did you think? All right, we've talked about the episode in general impressions. How are you feeling so far? You said you needed a few episodes to get a feel. What do you think of Jodie up to this point?
I do like this episode a lot better than I did the first. That's for sure.
But as far as your feelings of Jodie as the Doctor,
I've never had any problems with Jodie being Doctor.
But you said last time you needed a few.
That was no. That was no.
Oh, you meant for the whole series.
Yeah, I needed to get a feel for the series and where the series was going. Jodie's acting is spot on, and it's been spot on since she fell through a train.
Oh, okay. I guess I misinterpreted you from the last episode we talked about.
Yeah, no, I needed to not be confused and expecting the unit or Torchwood to show up and not getting that, then understanding, oh, this is Doctor Who, not a new Torchwood spin-off where Torchwood just never shows up.
Well, you have to remember also, Chibnall's goal when he made this was to he said they're not going to, in the first series, they're not going to reintroduce anything we're familiar with because they want to make this her fresh, sort of, we're bringing in new, like, for example, you compared the Weeping Angels, which was a David Tennant thing. But the Tooth guy, his race has a name, I just forget what they are, but they were introduced, they're sort of like supposed to be our new, sort of, we should be worried if we ever hear about them in the future episodes. So
they're ethnically cleansing entire races and planets. Jeez.
And pulling teeth. And I can tell you from having a toothache a couple times, that's pretty dangerous. Right by itself.
I understand that Chibnall wants to like set up a standing on her own kind of thing. At the same time, I mean, really? Do you have to? Because when I hear a superhero thing like Black Lightning is like, we're not going to do any crossovers, and you're like, okay, why? Well, because we want Black Lightning to stand on his own, and it's like, okay, to me that seems kind of racist because you literally want the black guy, to stand on his own before doing crossovers.
That's a fair argument.
I mean, with hearing that argument with Jodie is like, well, that's kind of sexist, is it not? Because you want her to stand on her own before you introduce anything that other Whovians may be familiar with. And I get that you want to change the season and introduce new things, but you don't have to not have stuff in there that other people recognize. And this would probably be why there is so many callbacks to like the Venusian Aikido
I was
and
just about to
stuff.
ask you. I'm glad you brought that up because I was just about to say. I was going to say a joke about pinky swear, and then speaking of pinkies, she uses it in the Venusian Aikido move, which was a John Pertwee third Doctor Era thing.
But again, that is a callback. That is a callback to stuff we've seen previously, and yet at the same time, you talk about not doing that because you want her to be standing on her own. Does brain not compute what sentence makes sense?
Well, I mean, they haven't used the Venusian Aikido since John Pertwee. In fact, it's never ever been brought up again since Tom Baker, all the way up until all the way up until Matt Smith, all the way until Peter Capaldi. Seriously, it's never even been mentioned since then. At least I don't think it has. But it's never been used. I mean, this is the first time since way back in the 1970s. So for me, I don't think they're relying on old lore for this because it's been so long. I think they're like, because they're pulling not only the visuals from the opening title for old classic Who, we're talking Troughton and Hartnell and John Pertwee era, but we're talking the Venusian Aikido. They've only mentioned a few things from the Pertwee era, like Metabilis 3, the Metabilis crystals, and certain things like, and Unit, of course. But they've never, and Joe Grant came back for the Sarah Jane Adventures, but they've never done the Venusian Aikido, and I've been waiting and waiting for it. As a geek who's old enough to remember, that's something, when she did that, I was like, oh, that's, because, there's only been so many episodes where, and they haven't showed it too often where any of the doctors had to really physically prove themselves in combat. We know Peter Capaldi couldn't, and some of it happened off screen, where he took care of them, and by the time he walks out and they're taken care of.
I mean, come on. Capaldi didn't win battles physically.
I wish he did.
He won battles by shock and awe. That's the whole reason he came out in a tank with an axe
and a spoon. He fought Robin Hood android with a spoon, so. Well, Robin Hood, who turned out to be an android, I don't know if there really was, as it turns out, a Robin Hood.
But again, it's a shock and awe tactic because it's subverting what is expected of him, or what would be of Jodie.
I'm really hoping they do more with the Venusian Aikido with her because she's very aggressive in this series. I like it, but there's going to come a time when unless they write it really horribly, that she's going to be challenged in a way that she has to physically defend herself. I had a little bit of an issue with her whole making a point to you don't need guns, and he's like, no, I do. This is how I roll, and then it turns out he was wrong. That was kind of in your face a little bit. It's sort of like the way David Tennant, it was in your face in the Unit episode when he was getting mad at everybody just because the soldiers carrying guns. That is ridiculous because
remember that Unit episode with all the soldiers and the guns was after the whole Freema Agumon and the fish people episode.
No, it was before actually. It was she jumped into the TARDIS at the end of that. Just before. No, she did. She went from the Sontaran experiment / the Poison Sky, and then she jumped into the TARDIS, and then the whole fish thing happened when he met his daughter.
Well, you also have to remember he kind of was in a sort of ritualistic combat when he first became the Doctor.
He was in the whole anti-war thing. I get that.
But no, it's not that. It's not that. He literally kind of pushed all of his anger and hate and love for violence and things that cause violence into a severed hand.
Yeah, that's true. And I can actually understand why the producers, and now that we've talked about this, in the one hand, it's not realistic to sit there and go, you never need guns. But at the same time, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to push a lot of it. I don't have a problem with this, but they are trying to send a lot of, let's call them messages, not agendas. They're trying to say, it's okay to be a female doctor, and you don't need guns because of all the violence going on in the world. You know what? When I think about it from that point of view, I get it. The only thing is that there's some situations where, like, when David Tennant was like ragging on that colonel and he did actually apologize when they proved that they could beat the Sontarans. But it was like, come on. I used to be a member unit, and I knew you guys used guns, and he had no problem with it back then. But once he entered the Time War and he got his post-traumatic, and he's just like, no, guns are stupid. You suck. And all of a sudden, anybody who held a gun.
Well, you have to remember, and I don't think we've talked about this, but you're actually a vet, George. And as much as people know that a lot of veterans do come back from war and they are more ritualistic with guns than anything else, there are also people who come back from war and who are the exact opposite. They become complete and utter pacifists.
And I'm going to give it you know what? No. I would give that a break, but what they did, this is why I don't like Moffat. I liked him in the beginning, and now I don't. What you just said would make complete and total sense. But they made a whole issue that from the beginning, the Doctor of War, the one thing that was known about him is he never carried a weapon. And so, except to write no more on the screen, on the side of a wall, before he takes off and attacks the dogs with his TARDIS. So it's like, how does he be a warrior without a weapon? Oh, because Jodie kind of sort of explains, with your mind, that's your weapon. Yeah, that's great of a message in theory.
Well, you have to. Okay. Let's unpack that thought, George, first, because the idea of even the doctors being afraid of John Hurt as the War Doctor is not because he actually used any weapons.
He had a warrior's mind.
It's because he used a weapon. A weapon. The only weapon that mattered. And for the longest time, they didn't even realize he never even used it, but they thought he did. And that was the weapon the weapon in which that brought back the Bad Wolf.
Also, if you ever listen to the audio series about the War Doctor that John Hurt actually did, it makes it very clear how he did his thing. You don't get it until you hear the great.
Well, see, I would love to do that, but I spend as much as I can just with Netflix and stuff. So
I got a copy from what they call Illegal Methods, and I don't care.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, not. So, anyways, so what I'm trying to say is I don't appreciate, but I do appreciate. I understand where they're going with this. And for the most part, I personally would never carry a gun. I mean, because I don't trust myself. I mean, if I carried a gun, I would be afraid of using it.
George, if you carried a gun, most of your friends would be afraid of you carrying it.
No, because it wouldn't be that I'm going to get drunk or do something stupid like that. I just feel...
No, that's true. That is exactly why we'd be afraid of you having it. You probably would do something stupid.
No, I just wouldn't trust myself to not overreact, because I've used a stun gun when I really have been attacked over the last 2 years. Imagine if I had but I don't want to kill someone. I don't want to kill someone.
Do you remember using a shock collar on yourself, George?
Oh, God, that was so many years ago. It was a dog shock collar. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. See, this is why we worry about you.
Oh, my God. That was a long time ago on the original Super Geeks, and everybody left. No, it was on Club 602. I remember now.
Yeah.
Oh, God, you brought back some memories. Anyways, there's a lot to unpack from this episode and from what I just revealed about myself. But but I do juxtapose that with what I'm hearing on the show. Like, again, I understand why the BBC has been sort of using the Doctor's experiences in the war to sort of say, no, you don't never need a gun. Even though he's going, we're being shot at. And I didn't really see, okay, they're being shot at. And even when David Tennant's daughter is shooting at people in that one episode, and she says there's a better way, because he tells her there's a better way, he doesn't blame her at first for using a gun in self-defense. It's when she has a choice, and she's like one up against another, then it's murder. Well, Jodie's basically saying, and these are not even people. They're robots. That's where I had a problem, because it's like, you're not taking lives.
I mean, come on. We kind of had an entire Moffat episode with sentient emojis.
But she didn't look at them like that. Otherwise, she wouldn't have even done the EMP. It was like, well, okay, maybe so, because she knew that it was temporary.
She already knew she already knew that it was temporary and they would reboot.
She knew that they weren't sentient, though. That wasn't her point. Her point was, don't get into the mindset of using a gun. That was her whole lesson she was trying to teach them. Like, but the thing is if you're being shot at by things, you're not actually taking a life.
Here's the thing. I think you're taking the violence aspect a little too literally, like too actually.
But if you look at the scene, there's
well,
being
no, wait. Let me finish. What she's trying to instill is kind of a, and yeah, this is kind of political, but it is a classic liberal/libertarian value of you don't need overt violence to solve a problem. You can do it with thought and reason and logic if you have the intelligence to do so. And even if you don't have the intelligence to do so, there's always someone that can. And you can confide in the person who can.
But the reason I didn't like that scene, I mean, they're never going to be perfect. If you watch it, and because I watched it so many times, I wasn't looking for that, but it just kind of came up on me. They're literally barely getting killed. I mean, they're behind pillars, they're behind target dummies, and these lasers are coming at them like, Joe. They can barely even think, let alone hear what she's saying to them. And they're supposed to be expected to say, no, you don't need one of that. You need to use your mind. How are they supposed to know that she was going to think of grabbing that robot and doing the EMP? So, I mean, you have to look at survival instinct. I mean, even if they weren't even robots, I mean, Ryan was right. You're being shot at. You have a right to defend yourself. And so the dog
defend yourself. Yes, run outside, guns blazing, to shoot every robot there. No.
Well, I mean, come on, adrenaline, and although it did lead into the whole Call of Duty first-person view thing, which I did appreciate, was kind of funny. But
well, I look at it more as the Doom thing, but I'm older school.
Well, I mean, but he made a Call of Duty joke in the episode, so you have to look at it like that's where they were going with that.
Yeah, I understand.
But okay, so my only point is that that's the only problem I had. But you know what? I'm not like gonna nitpick so much that I'm thinking that it kills anything.
You kind of already did.
No, I'm just saying that one part, but it didn't kill the episode for me, because you know what? I still give this, for me, a 10. And the only reason I gave it a 9 last week was because they didn't have the theme in the beginning. This one I give a 10. I give it a complete 10. I think the ending scene with the TARDIS is so beautiful. And also the fact that they built the character build-up of all the companions. Oh, I'm sorry, friends. Oh, I'm sorry, best friends. These are my best friends. I love that part. I love it. I love the fact that she's claiming to them, no, you're my best friends, more or less, and they're just like, okay, and they go. I love the relationship that's building up between them. How she's very positive, like, and she explains just enough to everybody to be realistic. Like, this is my TARDIS, dimensional engineering. You can't engineer dimensions. Maybe you can't. And it's just every little thing that they're doing. And I'm really thinking this is going to be. I'm kind of disappointed that there's only 10 episodes this season, because 13.
See that exchange right there, that kind of harkens back to the arrogance of the first 3 Doctors.
It was actually, yeah. This is like such a throwback. I love what they're doing this season. And everybody that we've ever told, where do we start? Start here. You don't need to go backwards. You don't need to catch up. This is an option, not a requirement. You can do that with Star Trek Discovery. You don't need Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Any of these, you don't have to watch the previous series to catch up and figure out if you want to. That adds to your enjoyment. Oh, now I get where it connects. You don't CW shows. Actually, you do. That's the thing that stinks, though, in that comparison. You kind of do, because you. You know what I mean? Because you've been watching anyways. Oh, that's a whole nother discussion. All right. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I think we've established what our opinions are of this episode. This is a quick reaction. And I want to thank Sun for joining me.
I have one. I have one
Sure,
last.
sure.
I have one last thing. Okay. Do you think that the crystals are going to change color depending on the mood of the TARDIS?
I'm hoping, like Mr. Tardis said in his review, they're going to remove one of the pillars because for camera wide shots, he had a great point. I used to hate him, but he has grown, and he's grown up, and his reviews are more analytical. And he loved and raved about this episode. But he made one incredible point that I hadn't considered. There's this one wide shot where you can't see the center console because of the way that extra unnecessary third pillar or fourth pillar, whatever it is in the way of the camera shot. You need to for the sake of camera shots, or else move the camera. Because the angle they chose to shoot that scene from, there's too many of them. It may be symmetric, but sometimes you have to sacrifice symmetry for cinematography.
Well, I mean, that's like what they did with the Golden Girls. The table in the kitchen for the Golden Girls never had a fourth chair.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy.
Because they never had a, because if you watch, there is never one of the girls with their back to the audience.
And I, as somebody that does a lot of 3D art and some animation, whenever I used to choose camera angles, I would sometimes have to either make a certain part of the scene. Well, you have this option in 3D. You can make it opaque and invisible, transparent, so that you can see through it. Or you would have to move the camera forward enough to go just past the visual plane. But when they did this wide shot of them looking at the you couldn't see the center target console, and it was because of those pillars.
Maybe. It's also possible that if this was a shot before they showed the console, that it was intentional.
It's possible. I'm hoping that they listen to what he said and just kind of they either remove it or they move the camera and make sure it doesn't hit that. You have to carefully angle it if you're going to do that.
Right. But I would like to point out you gracefully deflected my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your question? I'm sorry.
I said, do you think that the crystals in the new for the new TARDIS will change color depending on the TARDIS's mood?
No, and I'll tell you why. I think what the TARDIS did was it's linked to the Doctor and it matched. And I'm not the one that I'm not going to take credit for this opinion. Somebody mentioned this on a podcast, and I'm going to go. I echo that because they made me think about it. I think what happened was that the TARDIS, because it's linked to her, she built her own Sheffield steel screwdriver. I think it echoed the theme of her screwdriver. Sheffield made, and the color scheme of her Sonic.
Well, yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm thinking farther and farther ahead when there's some crisis, and even the TARDIS is.
You're thinking mood crystals. I see where you're going with that.
I'm thinking of the TARDIS ringing its own cloister bell, and all of the crystals turn red because holy crap, crap's going down.
I'm going to say no, but I will leave room for being surprised. The only reason I'm thinking no is because I don't think that's where they're going with it. However, you could very well be right. My initial reaction is to say no, that this is it, except for they might move that one thing to get the camera angles.
Well, we also have to admit, we've had the last, 2 TARDIS interiors, really shiny walls, so that any light from just about anywhere bounces everywhere. And now we have this TARDIS interior that is very, very mood lit.
But remember something. Jodie and Chibnall both have a connection to Tenet as far as Broadchurch.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is, we at this point we have a TARDIS that is built so much more on the lighting setting a mood than we are a TARDIS that can take any bit of light and just refract it everywhere. Because do you remember how much shiny, spinny metal stuff was in the just the last TARDIS that we had?
I know. I don't think that's going to be the case, and the reason why is because I think they're going to mirror David Tennant's organic. They talked about this in the behind the scenes. They were going for a crystalline because it was more like a decision because women just in a sort of a female, like what crystals represent, but they also were going for the organic look. And they haven't had an organic TARDIS since Tennant's. So once it became Matt Smith's TARDIS from his 2 versions and then into Capaldi's, which wasn't really much of a difference, since Tennant, they haven't had the what they call the organic TARDIS. And I feel like that's what they're going for. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. It's not impossible. There's a room for them to go. We're taking feedback. But as far as I can tell in my initial reaction, I think they're going to go with just keeping it the way it is for now, and then maybe slightly augmenting it a little bit. And they have to be careful, though, because if everybody complained when they got the leaked images, because the lighting was what dictates why this TARDIS works, if you light it up much, it looks stupid. At least as far as a lot of fans were concerned. You have to keep it dark so that the crystals sort of are exemplified.
No, I understand that. My point is, like say you're in a flight mode for the TARDIS, and like some of those episodes with Eleven and Pond and Rory, and they were literally just when they were when they were in flight mode, right? When they were flying through, when it was just portions of the episode where they were flying through the time vortex, and it was kind of in this low power mode, so the lighting was literally different.
You just reminded me, did you notice that when she turned on the TARDIS, did you notice it didn't shake and flip around, like make them go, and everybody had to grab the console, like in all the other versions?
Yes. This is kind of one of those weird. This is kind of one of those turn it on its head jokes that I was talking about. Just what if she actually starts driving the TARDIS and it doesn't make the sound anymore because she's remembered that there's a brake that she's that's needed to be lifted, and all the other guys have forgotten because she's literally the car chick.
But I'm thinking you have to, like, anything you want to guess or anticipate, and this is just my opinion. You look at Classic Who as your example up until Tom Baker, or maybe even Peter Davison, maybe even Colin Baker, because her costume suggests that. And the reason why is because if you look at all the other flight examples of when they jump into the TARDIS and take off, there have been very few episodes where the whole TARDIS goes, it shakes around. Okay, there's been 1 or 2. I could think of one which is, no, I can't. Seriously, it never used to do that. That was something that happened starting with New Who, and at least I can remember. But they never
again. But you also have to remember in New Who and since Tennant, we've always had the Doctor kind of just fiddling around with duct tape and paper clips to fix the TARDIS, and here is a Doctor who's literally the car chick for the TARDIS. She's like the car guy who knows the ins and outs of every vehicle ever, except it's a woman.
This is why I wish James Kerwin. This is why I wish James Kerwin was with us right now. Like when we talked on that one podcast, Straight Out of Gallifrey with Mike, because he would be able to help me out with this. Because I hated that episode Journey's End when I liked it, but I didn't like the part where he explained where they tried to. It's like the Klingon flathead explanation. It's like, oh God, did you have to really explain it? And he said, do you know why this old TARDIS shakes around? Because it's used to having a crew of 5 people. That's great, but every other episode after or before, you just ruined why it doesn't shake. That no longer makes any sense. And I chalk it up to the writing. You have to ignore it sometimes. He literally explained it, and it wasn't necessary because then you get later episodes where he pulls a switch, and the TARDIS. Like with Matt Smith, all the way through Matt Smith, if he pulled the TARDIS, the lever, whichever lever it was, Capaldi too. If the TARDIS starts to take off, there's an initial boom, and then everything shakes, and then it's smooth. Well, in the classic series, it never used to do that. And with Jodie's TARDIS, she hits the button.
Okay, George, stop waving your hands around.
You knew I was doing that, sorry. But
yeah, I could hear it in the microphone.
Okay, so you get what I'm saying, though, is that in the classic series, they
never had that
shaky, and then David Tennant explains it.
Well, unless something hit the TARDIS, yeah.
Right. So ever since he explained it, which wasn't even necessary, suddenly had an explanation. Do you know why this old TARDIS shakes around? It was meant for 5 pilots. And I'm running around doing this by myself. But yeah, in every classic episode...
Again, that explanation doesn't make sense in any first place because you literally have a pocket dimension with rooms in it. So there would be a gravitational force that would be accounting for all the other rooms. So not having 5 people in that central chamber wouldn't affect anything because there's literally a library and a swimming pool and like every other old console is its own room in the TARDIS.
Not just that, but the Master's TARDISes, all the ones he had, and the Ronnie made the same noise, and I doubt they all said, let's keep the brakes on. See, there was, Moffat, this is why I'm glad he's gone, seriously. Seriously, I'm so happy that Chibnall's going back to the basics, because, oh my god. Anyways.
Well, no. If Chibnall wanted to go back to the basics, man, he should have been the one to do the whole the TARDIS explodes and it ends the universe and we have to restart it episode because I would have accepted that wholeheartedly.
I will forgive Moffat for one thing and one thing only. In my opinion, the greatest episode of Doctor Who, bar none, is the Day of the Doctor. I don't know if it was because people consulted him or he just decided he was paying more attention and got on his ADD meds or whatever he did. But he nailed it on that one. So he explained.
I will combat you on that, George.
Let's not talk about this episode.
Moffat's best episode is the one with Van Gogh in it.
Oh, nope. I won't agree with you on that. I'm going to say the Day of the Doctor because it just as a Who sort of multi-Doctor special for the 50th anniversary. I'll agree with you.
I completely understand.
I agree with you. I agree with you on the individual episode basis for Matt, not for everybody else. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand.
On an emotional level, that was a great episode. I agree with you.
I mean, for me, that episode stands out so much more than any other episode of Moffat's tenure because of its emotional impact.
And I have to disagree with you that I will compare Fires of Pompeii with Tenet, which was what led into Capaldi's Doctor choosing his face.
Well, wait a minute. I'm talking about Moffat's tenure, not.
All right. I see what you're saying there. I was going to say, if you have to compare the emotion and the performances, I would stack up Fires of Pompeii with the Vincent and the Doctor up and put them side by side and say they're about equal. But I mean, you're right. One was Russell T Davies, and one was a Moffat. So, anyways, yeah, we could get sidetracked into that some other time because we already have. So, but all right, you guys. So we're gonna stop here because we're dragging this on. But the idea is, I think you guys know how we feel about this new episode. So next week we're gonna meet Rosa Parks and how she meets the Jodie Whittaker Doctor and her crew. I don't know.
I really, honestly, please portray her historically accurately because Miss Rosa Parks was a troublemaker. Oh my god, she was a troublemaker. She was doing this stuff long before she got arrested for doing it, which is what made her famous. She was doing this constantly, and nobody said nothing until that one fateful day.
I wouldn't get your hopes up on that, but I will say this. There have been complaining that if you got a guy shooting lasers in the middle of a Rosa Parks episode, there's already a sign that it's not going to be a true historical episode. Like
no. I'm not saying that they need to make it a true historical representation. No, just portray her like the troublemaker she was in actual history. Because she was an activist before she got arrested.
You got to admit, though, if you want to talk historical accuracy with Vincent the Doctor, which is the one you just talked about, a lot of people don't know about how he had all these issues mentally, and then he did end up committing suicide. They kind of addressed all that in that Doctor Who episode. I was surprised. They actually sort of historically made it accurate as far as he had issues.
Yeah, hell yeah. But see, here's the thing is, she was doing all of this activism before the fateful bus ride. When the fateful bus ride occurred in actuality and she was arrested, the media didn't know how to handle it because they thought it was just this poor old woman who was tired, and that's how they played it up. And she literally just, she knew when to be quiet, because that was her biggest strength for the whole thing, for the boycotts, was
Well,
was to let the media do the work for her by portraying her as this just little old tired woman who didn't do anything wrong, who was just tired and wasn't going to move, when in actuality she was a sneaky little broad because she'd been doing this for forever.
well, all we can do is wait and see. So, all right, son. So, thank you for joining for this initial reaction for episode 2 of Doctor Who season 11. Everything you just said makes me curious as to what's going to happen in the next one. And guess what, guys? Sometime next week we'll talk about that one too, and we'll see if Son was right. So, I want to thank you for joining us. Son, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me posting the episodes that I'm in on facebook.com/SunsealFan. Other than that, I really don't have a social media presence.
That's all right. This is a social media presence, so good enough.
But
All right.
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys next time, and I will post this as soon as possible, probably tonight, actually, and talk to you the next time. Same Doctor time. No, same Doctor Who, same TARDIS time? Never mind. I'll just call it there and say, see you next time.